At the airport, U.S. Marine Mike bids farewell to his girlfriend Jenny before flying to North Africa on a special mission. 3 months later, Mike and his observer Tommy are still in the African desert, waiting on top of a cliff for their assassination target. Eventually, they see two groups of people approaching from opposite directions. One group is coming on foot, while the other is a convoy full of armed vehicles. The groups meet halfway, and Tommy, along with his commanding officer on the radio, urge Mike to make the hit, but he hesitates. It sounds like a sweet family meeting, not like a terrorist doing business. Then Mike realizes that it is a wedding, and his target is the groom's father, who is now behind the couple. He reports the situation to his commanding officer and is ordered to kill the groom to achieve their goal at the same time. But Mike refuses to cruelly kill a civilian and lies to his commanding officer, saying he has lost the target. At that moment, a reflection from the sniper's scope reveals their location to the guards at the ceremony, who immediately open fire. Mike fires a few shots back before escaping with Tommy as the guards rush to evacuate their leader from the area. Some of the guards start heading toward Mike and Tommy in their vehicles, so the duo has no choice but to jump and roll down the hill. They run for cover behind a rock formation, and Tommy calls his commanding officer for help, but his GPS is broken and he cannot offer their exact location. The enemy gets closer and closer, so Mike fires at the hill to divert them in a different direction. Suddenly, their enemies leave because they see a sandstorm coming. Mike and Tommy decide to use it as cover and walk through it while Tommy makes another call. His commanding officer tells them to reach a village located 5 hours west so that they can be picked up. Eventually, the duo manage to get out of the storm and begin walking under the unbearable desert sun. Tommy talks the whole time and shares stories about his son and wife back home. But Mike still does not say much. Frustrated, Tommy points out that something is clearly haunting Mike inside and asks about Jenny, wondering about the possibility of marriage. Mike explains that he wants to marry her, but cannot yet, because it is complicated. Moments later, they get a message on the radio explaining that the main team has had complications and the new pickup point has been chosen, which means the duo will have to cross the desert to get there. Because of the dunes, the radio will not always work, so they will have to be very careful. After much walking, Mike and Tommy encounter the sandstorm again and stop to wait. They see a man with a child at the end of a rope walking through the storm, but they do not seem to notice them back, so the duo does not shoot. As the wind blows, a warning sign comes off its pole. Once the sandstorm has passed, Tommy and Mike continue walking in the hot sun. Suddenly, the warning sign lands right in front of Mike's feet. He cannot read it, but the skull obviously means danger, and he remembers that the United States has buried tons of landmines in this area. However, Tommy thinks Mike is taking it too seriously, and explains that it is a trick of the locals to keep enemies away from their villages. Tommy also points out that turning back means dying of thirst, so he keeps walking, convinced that the signal indicates that the village is near. After a few hours of walking, Mike freezes when he steps on something, but it is only a small toy soldier. He puts it away in his vest before realizing that Tommy is out of water, so he shares his. Desperate to keep his spirits up, Tommy starts walking backward as he continues to tease Mike about overanalyzing things. Suddenly, there is a click, and Mike tries to warn his friend, but it is too late. Tommy takes another step, and a mine explodes. As his ears ring, Mike takes a step toward Tommy, only to hear another click. He stops motionless from shock when he realizes he is standing on a mine and cannot move without activating it. Once the sand from the explosion has dissolved, Mike sees that Tommy has survived, but has lost both legs. He cannot stop screaming in pain and pleading for help, so Mike yells back to calm him down and explain the situation. Under Mike's guidance, Tommy tries to reach his bag with the radio, but the pain is too much. His mood worsens when he looks down and discovers he has lost his legs, driving him crazy. Mike calms him by reminding him of his family and mentioning the injections of medicine they carry in their vest. Tommy immediately takes both instead of saving one for later, as Mike says. Then Tommy looks for the bag again, and this time reaches for it. But unfortunately, the radio does not work. Desperate, Mike considers moving away from the mine because there is a possibility that it is old and broken. However, the risk is high, and Tommy wants Mike to live. So he draws his gun and asks Mike to send his love to his son before eliminating himself. Mike screams in frustration and pain, but quickly stops when he realizes that going crazy could bring him down. He then begins to lower his body extremely carefully until he is on his knees and uses his knife to gently move the sand. He finds round metal under his foot, confirming that he is on top of a landmine. Unknowingly for Mike, a man is watching him from a distance but walks away without helping. Next, Mike puts together his shoelaces, the strap of his gun, and his axe to create a hook. He throws it a few times to try to catch the bag, but does not reach far enough. Moving carefully again, Mike stands up and almost falls when he throws the axe. But fortunately, he recovers just in time. Now he can finally drag the bag toward him and grab the radio, only to find that the battery is dead and the spare is in Tommy's vest. At least the radio can be powered by the sun, so he leaves the small panel on the ground to charge it. Later, Mike keeps himself busy by checking his supplies. After a few hours, the radio finally charges, and Mike is able to talk to his commanding officer, explaining the situation and requesting extraction. However, the officer is not happy with the failure of the mission, and since Mike does not have GPS and has a leg already in the overworld, he is not considered a high priority. Helicopters cannot fly because of the sandstorms, so Mike will have to wait 52 hours to be picked up by a convoy. Mike is not sure he can survive that long, but has no other choice, and starts a timer on his watch. The officer reminds him that many of the mines are old and broken, and that there is a trench technique to survive this problem. However, communication breaks down before he can finish explaining. A few hours later, Mike eats some of his rations, noting that he does not have many left. Suddenly, the sandstorm begins to approach again, so Mike quickly covers his face, grabs his belongings and bends down to wait as much as possible against the wind. His body shakes a lot, but Mike is strong and manages to get through it without activating the mine. Once the storm has passed, Mike looks around and finds that the wind has pushed Tommy's body right next to him. After covering his friend's face with his hat, he opens his vest pocket and finds a picture of Tommy's family. He takes a minute of silence and puts it back before finally grabbing the battery. Unfortunately, the wind has moved the bag too far, and now he has no access to the radio. The depressing irony makes Mike laugh. As time passes, Mike can do nothing but wait. He covers his head to protect it from the sun and drinks the last drop of water. Becoming desperate, he fires a few shots into the sky and shouts for help to no avail. He begins to consider self-destruction as his only option, but at that moment he sees a Berber man passing by. Mike points his gun at him and asks him to stop, but the Berber man does not listen and keeps moving. Thinking that he might not speak English, Mike makes explosion noises to indicate that it is a mined area, but the Berber man taunts him. Then the man starts walking toward Mike in a zigzag pattern. Suddenly he asks why Mike is stuck, revealing that he understands English. Mike explains the situation as he continues to ask for water and the radio, but the Berber man taunts him for not moving. He takes his flask but does not help with the radio, just leaves while ignoring Mike's shouts and wondering if his strange movements help him avoid the mines. Hours later, Mike forces himself to pee into a drinking bag. He barely takes a sip before a little girl appears, running toward him in the same zigzag pattern. She gives him her flask full of water, and Mike drinks as he speculates that she is the Berber man's daughter. Then the child pulls a toy soldier out of her bag, and Mike shows her what he found in return, so she uses both to represent him and Tommy. Without using words, she pushes the toy to tell Mike that he must move on. Mike says he can't move and starts yelling over the radio without meaning to, so the little girl simply leaves. Later, as the sun begins to set, Mike plays some songs on his phone and starts a fire. He can hear animals howling in the distance, so he distracts himself by looking at photos of Jenny on his phone and watching a video he made especially for his trip as a good luck charm. Eventually, the fire goes out, and Mike falls asleep while looking at his watch. His father appears before him and hits him, triggering a memory of the abuse he suffered as a child. This causes him to wake up just before he falls. Then Mike tries to rekindle the fire. But at that moment, he hears the growl of wild dogs approaching. He starts shooting in the dark, but none of his bullets hit. Deciding to take a chance by using the flashlight, he discovers that one of the wild dogs is carrying away Tommy's bag, and there is another one coming toward him. After changing weapons, he opens fire again, wounding the dog. As the animal retreats, it activates a landmine, and the resulting explosion scares the pack away. The next day, Berber visits Mike again, calling him a lucky man to have survived so far. Berber explains that he does not know where the mines are, and that he walks like this to have a better chance. He thinks Mike is afraid to move on physically because he is unable to do so in his soul, and asks why Mike became a soldier, to which Mike replies that he had no more reason to stay. At least this time, Berber brings the radio to Mike, and Mike quickly changes the battery, but it still does not work. Then the Berber grabs Mike's face and tells him that he is a free man. This causes Mike to hallucinate the man as Tommy telling him to live. But once he blinks, the Berber is far away. A few hours later, Mike cuts off his boot because his foot is red and swollen. He also uses his knife to kill a scorpion. Eventually, the heat becomes too much, and he takes off his vest. It is clear that the whole experience is affecting him mentally. He begins to see hallucinations and interacts with them as if they were real, by screaming, stabbing, and even screaming in frustration. Every time this happens, there is a clicking sound. He even sees Tommy's body standing up and announcing that they are going home, but he quickly disappears. In the evening, Mike keeps trying to contact the base, while Tommy's hallucination tells him that he is just killing the battery. At that moment, the phone starts ringing, and Mike sees that it is a call from his father, so Tommy has to point out that it is not real. Mike loses his patience and pushes him away, so Tommy reminds him that this is happening because Mike has never worked through his inner demons. Mike says that leaving Jenny makes him as bad as his father, but Tommy reassures him that he is not. A flashback reveals that Mike asked Jenny to marry him, but she turned him down because she thought he still had some issues to work through. In the present, Mike is about to fall asleep, but at that moment, the wild dogs arrive again. They activate a mine and walk away from the explosion, but this time, they do not leave. Mike shoots into the darkness in front of him, only to be warned by Tommy to be careful. Suddenly, a dog comes at him sideways and bites his arm, so Mike kills it. Then Tommy convinces him to try the technique mentioned by his commanding officer, so Mike desperately starts digging in the sand. Unfortunately, the dogs jump on him to attack and push Mike away before he can finish the trench, setting off the mine and injuring him. As he falls to the ground, Mike blinks and realizes that the explosion was a hallucination, but the dogs are really attacking him. Determined to survive, he grabs his knife and begins killing them one by one, receiving several bites in the process. During the fight, he keeps thinking about the times when he was beaten in the past. In the morning, all the dogs are dead, and Mike has survived. At that moment, the radio finally goes off, and Mike learns that the convoy is delayed due to an attack, so he will be picked up in 17 hours. Knowing that the chances of survival are low, the base connects Mike to Jenny, and he immediately begins to apologize for destroying everything he touches as he sees her in front of him. Communication breaks off before Jenny can respond, and Mike finally loses consciousness, but is caught by Berber just in time. As the man puts ointment on Mike's wounds, he explains that a landmine took off his leg, showing his wooden prosthesis. He was very frightened in the hospital, but a nurse showed him enough compassion to help him go on, and eventually became his wife. Berber then makes Mike drink some medicine, warning him that it will help with the pain, but make the hallucinations worse. Mike mentions the child, but the Berber reveals that he was the one who brought him the flask. He now has only 3 children because his daughter died when the mine took off his leg. They used to collect mines together to sell to the guerrillas, and the child was very good at retrieving mines by replacing them with old cans. Berber thinks he is not as lucky as Mike, but at least he is free because he has learned to move on. After that, the man leaves, and Mike sees his daughter walking beside him. Suddenly, the medicine kicks in, and Mike watches the walls of his childhood home pop up out of the ground. He opens the door, and his child self appears, watching his father be extremely abusive to his mother. When his father noticed this, he said he would teach him how to be a man and hit him too. The hit causes Mike to return to reality for only a second because the flashbacks quickly begin again. He sees his happy life together with Jenny, but a clicking sound interrupts with a memory of his mother in a hospital bed. Mike had run away from home in fear and left his mother with his father, which caused her hospitalization. Another memory shows Tommy and Mike in a bar watching 2 men harass a waitress, who turns out to be Jenny. Enraged, Mike takes her side and begins beating the boys with much accumulated aggression. Hallucinations mix again, and his father reappears to hit him. Mike mentally changes between the desert and the memory of his mother dying in the hospital, which makes him feel guilty to this day. It is Tommy's vision that finally brings him out of it all to warn him that the convoy is coming. A voice on the radio is also trying to reach him, but Mike's dry throat can barely speak. He tries to wave a hand, but he is too far away to be seen. Then Tommy reminds him of the smoke grenade, and when Mike is about to grab it, he is suddenly hit by an enemy hidden in the dunes. Thinking of Jenny as encouragement not to give up, a bleeding Mike bends down and finally grabs the smoke grenade, but before he can activate it, the enemy shoots him again, causing him to fall. Memories of fighting with Jenny and her departure fill his mind as Mike resumes shooting, hitting as many enemies as he can before running out of bullets. His father reappears, and Mike recalls his mother telling him to let her go. Confused and overwhelmed, Mike points the gun at his father, who encourages him to do so. However, he thinks about Jenny and how he proposed to her after the bar fight, so he decides to be good for her and not shoot. His father hugs him at the same time he remembers a hug from Jenny, helping him finally move forward. The convoy will not stay much longer, and the grenade is not close enough. Mike remembers Berber's words and carefully backs away from the landmine. But nothing happens. Shocked, he digs out the landmine only to find that it was one of the little girl's cans all along. Inside the can, he finds a toy soldier. Mike laughs in relief and finally grabs the grenade, activating it just in time for the convoy to find him and rescue him. Later, a recovered Mike returns to the United States and is reunited with Jenny, ready to start a better life for her. Video is over. Subscribe to our channel, activate the notification bell, and become part of a community. Subscribe now, leave a like, leave a comment, and indicate which film you would like the recap of.